People talk about I'm a believer, but I shouldn't be depressed. And I'm like, well, how you think Jesus felt? He experienced quite a bit. Start having a relationship with yourself.
How do you do that?
Many levels, but the first one is just acknowledging who you are and asking yourself who you are. And if you don't know, making space to figure that out. People don't want to be called crazy. People don't want to be known as crazy. So that's what keeps them from getting help when they need it.
Okay.
And there's nothing wrong with prayer. There's nothing wrong with whatever your spiritual belief may be, but there is also nothing wrong with seeking help. And, I would really encourage any man to go down a list of emotions and say, wow, do I even know how I feel with these emotions? Like, do I know what disappointment feels like? Health insurance is a huge obstacle for a lot of people. It's a huge barrier. I've seen up to $9,000
for
a deductible. It's kind of like going to the gym. You'll never really be excited about starting that process because you know that it's a lot of work that goes into it. But once you get in it, you're grateful that you did. And our role is not to solve your problems.
Yeah.
Our role is to hear you talk about what you're experiencing, for us to listen well, and then to offer suggestions for ways to improve or to either process through what you're experiencing. Just decided to remain a solo therapist because I knew there was different things I wanted to try out and do as well. But they said, set your business up like you're an optometrist. And optometrists, they have a lot of people around them, but it's only one of them to them. Because I did everything on my own from the beginning. I did my credentialing, I did my own bookkeeping, I did my own billing, I did my own social media, I did all of it. But then once I started getting a return on my own investments, then I said, well, let me go ahead and use this funding that I'm getting from the work to now start hiring people to do this work.
So did you have a 3, 2, 1, and action. Welcome back to Surviving Startup. I am your host, Jamon, and I have a special guest today, Rebecca Span. It is Span, right? Because
Yes.
sometimes I say people's last name that be on Facebook, and they be like, that's just my last name that's on Facebook.
No, that's
So
right.
Rebecca Span.
Uh-huh.
So tell us who you are and tell us what you do. What is your business?
I am Rebecca Span. I am a serial entrepreneur and I am a mental health therapist. I own two businesses, and I founded one nonprofit. The nonprofit is Our Mental Health Collective. The two businesses are About You Counseling and Consulting, and also Your Therapeutic Journey Apparel.
So therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the lane. Okay. Why? What made you want to get into therapy?
When I was younger, I was always curious about people, behaviors, why people said the things they said or why they did the things they did. And so just that curiosity made me want to study more about human behavior. And when I was in 11th grade, I decided that that's why I wanted to, or what I wanted to go to school for. So I went to Jackson State University.
Okay.
Class of 2008. But yes, I went to Jackson State and I majored in psychology, and that was just an amazing experience. And after that, I got my graduate degree, both of my graduate degrees from Mississippi College in Clinton, Mississippi.
Okay.
And so from that experience, I just knew that going to get licensed and opening my own practice was something I wanted to do.
Okay, so it was like, it wasn't no thing where it was like, okay, I want to jump in. It was just seemed like the natural course to be an entrepreneur with it, just because.
So
like, how did that go?
In the therapy space, you really got to get your feet wet. So you have to have a lot of experience working with people. And so I started off working for an organization where we were on call 24/7. We only had like
grind.
8 cases, but our cases were intense. And I would have
So what
to
are
see
we
those
talking about?
families.
Intense? What you mean, like?
the behaviors of the children that I was working with at the time. They had intense behaviors. The whole makeup of the program was to keep children from going into the juvenile justice system. And so we would go into the home, and through counseling and through other interventions, we would work with the family to keep them inside the home versus sending them somewhere else. And because of that type of intervention, it required a lot of work on our end. And so, yeah, I did that for 2 years, and that was one of my very first like entry level jobs.
So I
And
was like, you went into the fire, like sink or
yeah,
swim almost.
yep. I had my bachelor's degree. I did have to have a bachelor's degree to do that. And so, with that, you had a lot of consultation. You worked with a lot of licensed professionals or whatever to help you through that. But yeah, we were in home therapists. And from there, I went into foster care recruitment.
What does
Then
that mean?
so I would go out and recruit foster parents. And so I worked throughout the state of Mississippi, and I would go to churches, different events, and speak about foster care, the importance of it. And then after foster care recruitment, I became a foster care counselor. So I worked with families and children who were in the foster care
Okay.
system. And then ooh, I got a lot of experience. I don't know how much you want to know, but I will say I
No,
have
lay it
worked.
out. Yeah.
I have worked in almost every entity where there is behavioral health. I've worked in the school system. I have been a director for a nonprofit before being a director for my own. I'm a school counselor, a licensed school counselor as well. So
So you work
yeah,
in the schools with the kids?
not now, but
I was
I
about to.
used to.
Okay.
I used to.
How long ago we talking about? I don't know, cause generation seems like
So
it's a
when
little bit different
that
now.
was 2013, 2014, when I was a school counselor, I was working in a
Okay.
school in Jackson, Mississippi. And then after that, I was a school-based therapist, so which was a little bit different.
Kids are starting their grandparents nowadays.
I know.
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Even when kids was crazy back in the day, you left your grandparents alone. Now,
Well, I try to shy away from the word crazy because that is a stigma
okay.
word, right?
So I was my last podcast. We was talking about that too. Like, yeah, stay
Hmm.
away from that word.
Yeah, yep.
So,
It's considered a stigma word, right? People don't want to be called crazy. People don't want to be known as crazy. So that's what keeps them from getting help when they need it.
okay. So that's funny that we go into that like this, right? Because if you look at it's Malik, he does like natural, holistic, CMOS, all of those kind of stuff, health products. So like body, physical health stuff.
Right.
And we happened to just stumble upon a conversation where it was like back in the days, like you had Pine Rest and things like that, and that was the first thing you heard if somebody so and so got sent to the crazy house. And so I get what you're saying, because I never thought about it like that though. So it's almost like this thing that's been subconsciously ingrained into our culture, where it was no mental health people. Nobody was talking about mental health back in the day, so you was just labeled as crazy.
Right, yeah. It's been more normalized now. And so, especially back then, mental health, even in mainstream, you got movies that depict people as crazy, or, if they were having a mental health crisis, then there was a lot of stigma even in the storylines for movies. But now you start to see our culture embracing it much differently. So you have
Definitely.
movies that have therapists that are a part of the movie, or you have not only therapists but black therapists, which is a thing because again, when we talk about breaking down stigma, you have to look at all areas of it, and representation is important, and that's where I am a huge advocate around is making sure that communities of color specifically have and are able to locate people who look like them in order to talk through, whatever it is that they need to process through in a therapy space.
Definitely. So you said crazy is one of those things where it's like a stigma that could make someone apprehensive about going
Absolutely.
to therapy. What are some other things that may stop people go from therapy from your experience?
Religious beliefs. Sometimes,
Ooh, that's
especially in certain cultures, and I could speak for the Black culture, being raised in church, we're
Mm.
taught to pray, we're taught to be
Let
strong.
me tell you this: just
Hmm.
because you got the Holy Ghost, don't mean
Uh-huh.
you don't need some therapy in your
Listen, yeah,
life.
you can have Jesus in the therapist too. It is a two-sided thing. But seriously, and there's nothing wrong with prayer. There's nothing wrong with whatever your spiritual belief may be, but there is also nothing wrong with seeking help. And I always like to compare it to our physical health. If you have a headache or if you broke your leg and you were bleeding or you were in crisis medically,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
would go to a
You
doctor.
going to that doctor quick.
Exactly. So it's like when you are having mental distress, there's nothing wrong with seeking help. And something else that often comes with stigma is people believe that you have to be going through a major crisis
To need.
and, yeah, to need it. And
Mm.
it's like, no, you can go and talk about your job. You can go and talk about your kids. You can go and talk about yourself. You can go into therapy and say, you know what? I don't know exactly what we're going to be working on, but I know being in this space is going to be helpful for me. And so I'm willing
Mm-hmm.
to explore wherever this goes. And for a therapist, that is so powerful because that lets the therapist know that that person is committed to
And
making some
willing to making
change.
some changes in their life. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what happens in that space, though, things naturally come up and things that you maybe didn't realize were parts of your life that you needed to
Mm-hmm.
process, they're there. And so,
Just
um,
don't. It's just like in the back of your thoughts, so you don't
mhm,
really think about it like that.
mhm, yep, absolutely. And then when you start processing with someone, that's a really good space to be in because you're not in crisis. And so, just like you wouldn't wait until it's time to go to the emergency room if you're having some symptoms, and sometimes people will.
Sometimes people, some men will. I,
That's
our
a whole
men in
nother
our
topic.
culture, yeah, we'll wait. Like
Mhm.
that hurt, but
Mhm.
it ain't. It'll
Mhm.
go away. It'll go.
Yep. Yep. A lot of
It'll go
people. A lot of
away.
people. Right. Which is true. Which is true. But in being proactive, if we're really in touch and in tune with our bodies, when we start noticing things,
Hmm.
that's when we should call our doctor and say, "Hey, I just want to come in and have a conversation and talk about these symptoms because I'm concerned." And then that's where they can do some tests and some more
Yeah,
discussions. And it's the same with therapy. Don't wait until life really lifes
and
because it's
then now
going
you
to
like,
life.
yeah,
And it is okay to go at that point, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying making it a proactive step in your everyday life, in the way that you show up in the world. That's really important because you'll be able to work through a lot because you're not in distress.
and you put it on silent too. It's okay. Things
Oh,
happen.
they're on emergency whatchamajigget. I'm sorry,
You good?
bypass I should be.
Okay. It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it.
It's okay.
So
Life
it was a
life like we
couple.
just got done talking about.
Life be lifing.
Life be life.
It was a couple things though that you said that I want to make sure that we unpack because
Okay.
so for one, the church aspect, and I say this from a personal aspect and from just seeing comments on different things around different subjects when it comes to the church. A lot of people feel like they've went to church and then they have this encounter with God or salvation, or you know what I mean. I
Mhm.
don't want to get too into that part of it, but
Mhm.
then they say like I still feel like I have these things
Mhm.
that's still affecting me, and I feel wrong. I feel wrong for being in God and feeling like I still have these depressions. Or I feel wrong for being in God and still feel like I have these angers that like God can heal. Like you need
Yeah,
to make
yeah.
sure.
Can we pause it right quick?
Yeah, we can
Is it?
pause it real quick. Go ahead. And we're back. Had to take a brief hiatus.
Yeah, no
But we was
problem.
on the church and talking about.
People who are believers but still experience depression or anger and things like
Have you
that.
ever experienced clients in that? Like, what was? Tell me what that's like. Like, I mean, somebody may be going through the same type of thing right now that's out there that may be listening to. Like, so what did that look like? Like, I don't know if I'm wording the
Being
question right.
being human, that's being human. And it's just as simple as that. And that's how I talk to people through that, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to spiritual beliefs, whatever your belief system, but specifically for mine, I can say as an example, people talk about I'm a believer, but I shouldn't be depressed. And I'm like, well, how you think Jesus felt? He experienced quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And, from what we know and what was recorded to our knowledge, there were times when he was in deep sorrow. There were times where things happened and,
In the
there
garden.
were some
Yeah.
emotions that were felt and shown and even, reported back to us. And so that just also normalizes to me that you too are human. And so, being a human being comes with having emotions, and emotions are not a bad thing. And so,
Definitely.
just because you believe in God and you believe in a higher power, that does not mean that you won't feel anything. That's not what a
Or
belief
just feel
system.
or just feel positive emotions all the time.
Exactly. Yeah, that's not what a belief system is for. It's not to say that, okay, if you believe in this one thing, you're not going to feel anything else. That was never the definition I was
Mm-hmm.
given. However, there are some spaces that do not do a good job of educating people that way. So people feel ashamed or they feel embarrassed that they are going through these very human experiences when again that's not how that was ever
Yeah.
intended to be. And so, if there is someone who is struggling with anything, regardless of your belief system, my firm belief is just seek help. If you believe in God or you don't, whatever you're
Seek
going
help.
through, there is someone you can talk to and just seek help. Treat yourself
Yeah.
as a human being. That's it.
Give yourself some grace.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and then the other thing that you were saying, which actually I just talked about with another guest, like right before you came on, was the fact of how, especially we as men, we're taught so much to push emotions down
Mhm.
because it's a sign of weakness.
Mhm.
So our whole lives, a lot of times, we be taught to not show emotions, don't cry, and this and that. Um, what do you see as far as in the community, as far as some things that's like that may be some red flags that may tell people, hey, like, hey, at the very least, you might want to start self-evaluating or go to a counselor. You know what I mean? Like, what are some things that you see happening that people tend to ignore?
um, the basics, understanding emotions and what they are. For men specifically, being able to express more than one emotion outside of anger. Men, anger is normalized. But then sadness and disappointment, fear,
Mm-hmm.
people don't really talk about that as often. And, I would really encourage any man to go down a list of emotions and say, wow, do I even know how I feel with these emotions? Like, do I know what disappointment feels like? Do I know what embarrassment feels like? And really asking yourself that. And again, seeking some help to go through that process
Mm-hmm.
because um, young boys from a very young age are not given that vocabulary. Girls are. And girls are also
Mm.
given
Yep.
resources and the
Yep.
support so that they can explore their emotions. But young men are not. And
Mm-hmm.
so, as a grown man, a lot of men struggle with being able to express what they feel because they don't even have the words to express it.
And I would love to hear what the audience thinks about this. I definitely one of the things that I absolutely hate on the internet
Mm,
is the men bashing the women and the women bashing the men,
mm-hmm.
especially within our culture. Like we all need each other to
Absolutely.
survive, especially in this crazy world.
Mm-hmm.
But as a man, one of the things I was actually saying to the guests was that it was actually a incident and it made me realize that I didn't understand the way I felt in that incident.
Mm,
And I was like, maybe I should really explore the way I feel because I don't like not knowing the way I feel right now. And
mm,
then when I started looking at that, I started looking at the things I had in anger and the things that I was irritated with, and then I started seeing more and more stuff into my past. So it really was that moment where I decided to look at myself and the emotions
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of try to figure out what's going on with me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I could understand myself.
Right.
But it's still like I ain't gonna lie, I've been procrastinating therapy for about 2 years. I've been telling myself I'm gonna do some therapy.
Mm-hmm. So why?
um so one of the things which ain't a really a huge obstacle is the health insurance.
That is a
Is
huge obstacle.
finding someone that I feel like can identify enough with my situation that can take this health insurance that I have,
Mm-hmm.
because I really can't come out of pocket at this time and moment. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Health insurance
And
is an obstacle.
procrastination is behind
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So we can talk about the health insurance part.
Right. And we'll talk about the other piece too. But health insurance is a huge obstacle for a lot of people. It's a huge barrier because you do have people who, one, may not be employed to have health insurance, or if they are employed to have health insurance, it's too expensive. Or then if they do and they can afford the health insurance and they have it, they may have high deductibles. So that means even though you're paying for it, you still got to come out of $2,500. I've seen up to $9,000
For
a deductible in order
and
for
that's
the
like for
insurance
how
for the
and
year.
and that'll cover it through the year, but that's a 9.
So what a
Okay, you gonna
deductible
have to
is
definitely gonna have to break this
right. So
down
what a
for how this
deductible
working in
is
your
that you
industry.
have to meet that amount in care, that dollar amount in care before the insurance company will start paying.
So you have to do that even before they'll be able to start.
To covering, right. And so if
Man, it
you
seems like
don't
it'd be cheaper to
have,
just pay for.
and that's where a lot of people land. But then again, once again, you go back to square one. If I don't have the funds to pay for this, then it's a continual cycle, and it's unfortunate. However, you do have some therapists who do accept sliding scales. I know for my practice,
What
I'm
is
not
that exactly?
a
So
sliding.
people
I'm
can
sorry.
understand.
A sliding scale is where you can get a therapy session for a percentage of the cost, a fraction of the cost. You just have to ask if they provide it. A lot of times it is income based, and they'll ask you, what can
So
you
would you
afford?
suggest like just calling around on some therapists in your area?
Yep. So you can go to our directory at OURMAC.org, and we do have therapists listed there.
Okay.
And on their profiles, they'll list if they do take sliding scales, and some people do.
Got you.
Yep.
You.
And so with the sliding scale, that's a way again to pay out of pocket, but it's far cheaper than just paying a full rate.
So that is one way if you don't depending on if you have, and so that's probably not geared towards insurance though, right? If the sliding scale.
I mean, you might have insurance, but if you have
so
a high
whether
deductible,
you do or not, so the option for people with high deductibles or with no insurance, call around.
ask for a sliding scale.
Our mental health is just, if not more important than our physical health.
Mm-hmm.
So what's some other things if I'm feeling like if that being able to pay or insurance is one of those things that's a barrier for getting therapy, what are some other things that we can do as a
So in the community, there may be, different groups hosted, and some of those are free. There could be different organizations that will pay for therapy. I know on a national level, the Boris Kojo, it's a therapy fund, and
Okay.
it is through not Boris Kojo. I think I said that wrong. That's the actual actress,
actor.
Taraji Henson.
About to get us canceled.
I know. I am so sorry. Just edit all that out.
Okay, so it's
that out.
Taraji's. So
Yeah,
it's a national fund for.
Yeah, yep. And you can apply to get a scholarship for therapy. And there are a lot of therapists who are connected with that locally and throughout the country as well. Here in Michigan, they used to have a fund, but I'm not sure if it's still up and working. But yeah, there are some minimal options. You can always reach out to your primary care physician if you are using your insurance and just asking them if they have any connections or if they know of anyone who could be a potential good fit, maybe. But I always recommend just going to the directory and checking to see if, you identify with somebody.
Okay, dope. So I just don't want to leave no stone unturned for even for myself, to try to get rid of all the excuses. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's important. And I think a lot of people try to wait until they are ready. And I don't know if there's ever a time to be
I
ready.
would never go if I wait till I'm ready.
I don't, it's
I
kind
ain't
of
never
like
gonna be
going to the
ready.
gym. You'll never really be excited about starting that
Hmm.
process because you know that it's a lot of work that goes into it. But once you get in it, you're grateful that you did. And so, if there's anything that I can offer to you or to anybody else, it's not waiting until you have it together or you're perfect or you're
Hmm.
ready. Now, you do have to be committed to the process and whatever that process looks like for you, right? Like some people, it's weekly. They go to therapy weekly. For
Okay.
some people, it's every 2 weeks. Some people, it's like, I'm going to go every 3 weeks or once a month. But whatever that is, be committed to what that process
So
is.
what does that look like though? Because it's like, okay, if I'm coming every week, can I still be coming every week and not be committed to the process?
You could, but that would be on you. And if you have a really good therapist, they'll shine that light back on you and say, you come every week, but you're not, they might not say it like
So
that.
like, so what are some things though that's going on where it's like, are y'all sending us home with stuff? Like, what is going on?
No,
Like, we
absolutely
get
not.
homework.
It's
Like,
a yes. I give homework as a therapist. I always give reflective homework because I feel like the therapy work doesn't happen in the room. It happens outside of the therapy office. So people need to have things that they reflect on and pay attention to. So then when they get back to therapy, they're reporting about what they
okay,
saw, what they felt, and
yeah.
etc.
So what is some things that? All right, now let's say I can't get past my barriers. Is
Mm-hmm.
there some things that I can do as an individual to try to make my mental state better? You know what I mean? What is it? What is it? Trauma informed. So is it some things that I can inform us about some things that we can do without therapy before we can take that step?
Yep. So one, I always say, pay attention to yourself. Start having a relationship with
How
yourself.
do you do that?
Many levels, but the first one is just acknowledging who you are and asking yourself who you are. And if you don't know, making space to figure that out. One way to do that is to spend a lot of time with yourself. And I'm not talking
Mm.
about on social media
You got to
or
get off social media.
yeah, that's a whole nother conversation.
We might need a
But
whole episode on that.
yeah, seriously. But I'm talking about really spending quality time with yourself, asking yourself
Mm.
some really powerful questions. What do I like? What do I dislike? How did that make me feel? What are my inner truths? What are some things that I really like, some deep down traumas that I've ignored? What hurts me? What makes me sad?
Mm.
Using that same list of emotions and asking yourself some of those things. And then once you start to have a really solid relationship with yourself, when you can be honest with yourself, because oftentimes people aren't even honest with themselves. They can be in
Yeah.
therapy, they can be a therapist, right? Like that doesn't mean that we're exempt from being human beings as well, but being honest and saying, you know what, I should not have done that.
I can be. Can I say this though?
Hmm.
Um, from a you good? Is it good?
Hmm.
All right. So from a perspective of a man, like I think anybody once you really start to search within yourself, you can find the honest answers that you've been lying to yourself even about. But sometimes as a man, the emotional intelligence is low.
Hmm.
So we don't always know what a lot of times we be so reactive, which we use anger so much, which is actually a female emotion.
No, wrong.
What?
Anger is a
No,
secondary emotion.
so what I say, well, let me clear that up for y'all.
Uh huh.
On my head, let me clear this up. So
Uh
when I
huh.
say that, I mean how we react out of anger and emotionality, right?
There's no gender to
it's a
that though.
I feel like it's a feminine trait because as a man, you should be able to conversate, like, right? If your woman is emotional, y'all can't solve a problem if you get emotional back with her.
But so you said should be. That means that that's definitive and that's a fact somewhere. But that's not true. Emotions don't have genders assigned to them. So a woman could know how to have that same structured conversation, and then a man could know how to have that same structured conversation, and vice versa. The man might be more emotionally charged in the moment than the female may be. So it doesn't mean that it's gender based. It's not.
But I just feel like we should be able to control our stuff to not lash out.
That's easier said than done if you don't have the tools to do it.
And I definitely, that's where I definitely agree with you with that. Like our generation, a lot of us, it was a lot of men raised by women. So it's not been a lot of, and even our dads, like, right, even if your dad was like in and out, in all the way, like a lot of times we wasn't even taught how to deal with emotions, right? How to look at your emotions, how to evaluate your emotions. And you said that we should look at like those things. How do we evaluate those type of things within ourselves?
Legit, go on Google and type in a feelings list and go through that list and ask yourself, have I ever experienced this? And if you have not, look up what the emotion means and then start paying attention to when things are going on around you and your relationships, the different dynamics
And how
you have.
stuff make you feel.
Exactly. Like in that moment when you are, and it requires you, and that's why I say start with yourself first, because you have to study who you are. And
Definitely
so
agree.
pay attention to, how does it make you feel when your boss talks to you that way? How does it make you feel that, your partner spent the money that was in the savings? Or how does it make you feel that you have not spoken to your mother in 3 or 4 weeks? You know what I mean? Like really taking the time to break down everything that you're experiencing on a daily basis and then saying, wow, I've experienced a lot, but I really haven't addressed any of it.
Definitely.
So it starts with you, and it starts with being honest with yourself. And the honesty piece is literally asking yourself some questions. Am I okay? Am I happy? Am I living the life I want to live? Like some very basic, seemingly basic questions.
But people don't ask themselves these questions.
No.
I think what happens too, like with that, as far as what you just said, is we start off with so many dreams when we young, and then we go through life and everything life has, and then all of a sudden we're not even dreaming no more. It's just like we living. Then you start to ask yourself those questions, and it's like this ain't the life that I want to be living. I'm not
Or
happy,
survival. A lot of people are in
yeah,
survival mode.
definitely, especially with the price of food nowadays. A lot of it's crazy. So what is some other things that you think that people should know when it comes to mental health? Like,
Again, the biggest one is you do not have to be in a crisis to seek help. When you are seeking help and you are looking for a therapist, there are some things that you should do. One, I would definitely reach out via email or phone call. Typically,
okay,
therapists are in sessions all day long, so a phone call might be tough. But I would send an email and ask if you can do a consultation with them. Schedule a time to meet with them. And most therapists do offer like a 10 or 15-minute consultation and ask them some questions about, how do you or how are you in the therapy space? What kind of therapy modalities do you use? What are your beliefs on this? Or what are your
so
thoughts
now we're
about
talking about
that?
interviewing a therapist.
Pretty much, yep.
So what's the top 5 questions you should ask a therapist before choosing a therapist?
So one, especially if they're listed on any like public profile, they'll have their credentials listed. So that's something I'm not going to say that you shouldn't worry about, but you should pay attention
The
to.
credentials.
And making sure that person is actually licensed with the state. And then two, making sure that they take your insurance and what that looks like. Three, you want to know about scheduling. What does scheduling look like? What hours can I schedule or not schedule? What happens if I have a no-show or if I have an emergency? Because oftentimes there are late fees that are
Yeah.
associated and comes with that. 4, you can ask them what their beliefs are around whatever situation you're going through.
Do you think
It's
that's an important piece of the puzzle?
absolutely, because if they don't have the skill set to assist you, then that might not be a good fit for you.
Got you.
And then also, if you want to know any other questions around the treatment modalities that they use, like what is their belief system when it comes to, certain issues or the treatment, you got, oh gosh, I can get into a list of those. I'm not going to go there. But again, wanting to make sure that they are skilled in whatever it is.
So
that
are
you're
you talking about like the
experiencing.
different kind of whatever methods that they using?
Like, what is their focus? How do you best engage with your client? And then you'll have a therapist that'll give you a rundown on what their belief system is and how they
Okay.
engage with their clients. So you definitely want to know how they do those things. And then, if there's a hypothetical, that you have and you're like, so if this came up and I brought it into the therapy space, how would you react? Those are good questions because it lets you know how that therapist will respond to you.
Got you. And so you were saying too also that one of your missions as for therapy is making sure that especially people of color are they have access to therapy in their neighborhoods. Do you think that's lacking? And why do you think that is? If so,
So just from a national level, black and brown therapists, and when I say black and brown, I mean black, I mean Latinx, I mean Asian, I mean African, I mean indigenous. There are a list and a host of cultures that go underneath that umbrella of communities of color. And so we are, in number, we're the majority, but when it comes to the field of counseling, we make up a smaller percentage. And so just nationally, there's a lower number of us that are therapists. So that's the first part. But then the second part is at one point, there was not a lot of access to us. We were more so in agencies or we did a lot of work for other nonprofits and things like that. But
Okay.
now I would say in the Grand Rapids area, through our directory and through the many practices that are now owned by black and brown clinicians, there is access. And so people can locate a therapist that looks like them, which has been a phenomenal thing that we have been able to be of assistance with.
I think that's dope because I definitely do think there was a stigma around like therapy in our communities.
Oh, absolutely.
It's probably where some of the procrastination come from, like subconsciously. You know what I mean? So you doing all of this therapy and you helping people get themselves together, right? And you started this business as a therapist. But how does a therapist keep their self sane in the midst of hearing so much problems and negativity all day, every day?
So I like to stay outside, like literally outside. So either that's walking, that's just being at the park, that's being by water, that's like just being in the elements with plants and air and all of that, because that's really, really healing for me. I have a therapist myself. And so, I'm making sure
Okay.
that I am processing and taking care of my own life because, oftentimes I am helping others to navigate through theirs. Friends, family, laughter, doing things that I enjoy. And so just making sure, again,
Is
that
it
I'm
a lot
centering
though, like
myself.
dealing with that with other people's problems? Like,
Um, I was about to say. Um, I would say it is
as far as
not.
like emotionally draining, like
Um, I wouldn't say that it is a challenging job at times, but I would not say that it is hard, if that makes sense. Like I enjoy what I do, and when we're helping people, we're not doing a lot of the work. Right? That's not our
okay,
role. Our role is not to solve your problems.
yeah,
Our role is to hear you talk about what you're experiencing for us to listen well and then to offer suggestions for ways to improve or to either process through what you're experiencing. So when you do a good job at that, you're not taking on this weight of I got to solve this problem because it's not my problem to solve. And the relationship that I have with my clients is that I let them know my role is to empower you to walk through your life. I am not an expert on your life. I only know a few things. I literally have a degree of knowledge, right? Like, hence degrees. So I'm never going to walk around and say that I have it all together and I know how you should be living your life because that's not true. But what I can say is there's some things inside of you that can help you to process through what you're experiencing and to ultimately help you become a better human being.
Dope. That's dope. So now can you break down what does your business look like? Like, are you a practice, brick and mortar, nonprofit, profit? Like, what does that look like?
So, my counseling business is an LLC. I am 100% virtual. After COVID,
so you all virtual.
All virtual.
Okay.
Yep. After COVID, I used to see clients in my office, but after COVID, I just came back home, and I've been home ever since. So that has been awesome and has been really, really good for my client base because they oftentimes, like the flexibility and not having to leave, right? And to be able to receive therapy. So, yeah.
Do you think that virtual has been a barrier or better for like the relationships of? Has it been a mix or has it been more so or more or less well accepted and it's still working like how it should work?
Absolutely. Yeah, you have a lot of therapists who, same as me, did not go back to the office after COVID. And COVID, although there were a lot of negative things that we noticed about our society in COVID, there were some positives that popped up too. And it made us all realize that we don't necessarily have to get in the car to go to spaces. We can get on the phone or we can do a video call. And so that has increased access for communities as well as being able to have virtual or to be connected to a therapist virtually versus, the barrier of transportation.
So then if it's somebody thinking about getting to this field, is when you're thinking about whether it's in person or virtual, right? You said you didn't excuse me, you said you didn't go back into the office. So did you shut your office down? Like,
no, I still have my office. I still have it, but no, I'm not doing therapy.
Okay, so I asked you that because my next question was gonna be like, what did that look like as far as like your income, like the profits? Like, was it like, you know what I mean? What's the difference with that?
What, in person and virtually?
Yes, what I'm asking is, do you use the space at all?
I use it for the organization uses it. Yeah.
Okay, so all right, we ain't started talking about the organization yet. So you have that and you use that. So it's just you was able to kind of like fold something else into it. But what does the margins look like? Like, what is it? Is it a hard business to really make profits and stay afloat?
If you do not know how to market for clients, because that's where your income is going to come from, it's going to be hard. So you have to get, as a therapist, unless you're a private pay, you have to get credentialed with insurance companies to be able to accept insurance. So that's the first step.
Boom. Let's stop there then and start there. So what does that process look like? Is that a hard process?
It's tedious. It's very tedious. It's an application. Different insurance companies have different processes, but for the most part, it's an application that you have to fill out as a provider. You have to have certain provider codes.
What do you have
and
to
things
have
like
in
that.
order to be able to get that? Because I'm pretty sure that's a big part of it, being able to have insurances. To be able to pay.
So you have to have your business established, and then you have to have an
So you talking about your
NPI.
LLC, your EIN, all of that stuff?
Yep, you have to have all that in place. You have to have your bank account in place. You have to have a physical location, and then you have to have an NPI number, which
So
is
how
a
does that
national.
work with virtual then?
Insurance companies accept virtual locations, but I still have a physical location. So most therapists are attached to a physical location.
If you don't want to have a physical location and you in the process of trying to start a therapy business, then you can have something that's virtual
like
location.
you can have like I know some people that use like a virtual address and things like that, but for the most part insurance companies want to have you connected to some type of physical address, so if they have
Okay.
to send you something or anything like that. But if you are 100% virtual, you can do that.
So we
It's
talking about like a
different.
PO box or something? Is that
No, not a PO box. You do have to actually have an address, and so they do have like
okay?
virtual offices and virtual addresses that you can use.
Okay, and then now is what are you talking about? Because I seen this somewhere before, and it's places that just actually charge you to get your mail sent to them.
Mhm.
That's virtual addresses, but it's
Mhm.
actually like a physical place. Or that's what
Mhm.
you speaking
Mhm.
of?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yep. But again, you got to pay attention to what that insurance company is asking for. But I do know people who do have those virtual addresses. So you have to have all that in place. You have to have a national provider identification number. And so that's a MPI number. You actually have to have two of those.
what do you have to do to get those?
Ooh, and it's another application. So it's a lot of applications that's going to be asking the same thing over and over.
And what are some of the main things that you need to have in
Same.
place for those applications? Like, what are some of the
Bank
things that
account.
you?
You have to have your business. You have to have your license, your
Okay,
full
so just
license.
go everything legit and
Yep.
looking on well. Okay,
Yep. Because you're setting yourself up as ultimately as a clinic. Like you're saying that I am a provider, and so as being a healthcare provider, you have to have those things in place.
okay,
One for billing, but two, so that the insurance companies know that they're sending their members somewhere that is
gotcha.
credentialed. Yep. So then after going through that process of getting credentialed and being on insurance panels, you can now start saying, I take or I accept this insurance. You start marketing yourself. And then once you start marketing yourself, whatever that looks like, if it's social media, if it's on an online directory, then people can start calling you or emailing you to, sign up for services. And then from there, you do the whole process of getting a client through the intake process. And then once they get into your chair, you do that whole intake process. After that, you bill them. You can do your own billing or you can hire a medical biller
Okay.
that will then send your claims off to the insurance company to be paid, and then you'll get paid that way.
Okay, so I like to put people on the spot when they come on the show, especially when I hear stuff like this, because that sound like it might not be too difficult of a process, but a lot. So I would say I would love for you to do a like virtual how to start up and getting all of those. Like if you can show people how to do that, then it can just open up some other income for you. You know what I mean?
I used
'Cause
to. I
it's
don't
more.
anymore though.
So why you don't? Like what was so you used to
Consultation.
school like you used to show people how to start their firm.
Their own,
Okay. So
yeah.
you've been down that road. So
Oh
what was
yeah. Been there. I've helped many of friends and colleagues to start their practices. I'm just in a space now where I've shifted my focus from being in a practice so much because I'm only in my practice one day a week, and then the rest of the time I'm full time within the nonprofit. And then I drop T-shirts on different release dates, and so I only do about 5 drops a year for my T-shirts.
okay. So then that's because we was talking we went into the therapy, then you were saying now like you have a non-profit and a t-shirt. Like are those connected? Like so what is those?
All of the
organizations?
entities are separate.
Okay, so what is the non-profit that you have?
So that's the Our Mental Health Collective, and we have the online directory, which is for wellness providers as well as mental health providers,
Okay.
because we have a belief, which is true, that mental health is not just therapy. It can be through a massage therapist, it could be a chiropractor, it can be a doula. It could be a naturopath doctor. So, it's not necessarily just a therapist that can offer you this avenue of assistance and healing.
Yeah, okay. I feel like I feel like you went more into it before the show when we talked about it.
About the
So
organization?
the collective itself. So now who's on there? Like, all right, is it geared towards?
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it geared towards putting more of people of color clinicians out there, Is it everybody? Is it just therapy? Is it physical therapists? Is it different forms of therapy?
So the collective, our entire purpose is to one, center Black and brown clinicians and mental health professionals and wellness professionals. So, we do that through our directory. And then the other piece is to make, and that's one area in how we serve the community. We also do some programming throughout the year, where we are doing it's called a BIPOC, Black Indigenous People of Color mental health fair. And so we have like
Okay.
a lot of different resources there that the community can come to. But our primary, as of now, community focus is the directory, which is free. Anybody can go on the website and look up and find a therapist. But then on the other side, we offer a lot of programming for clinicians and mental health providers. And what that looks like is
Okay.
assistance with test prep, because it costs a lot to become a therapist. And that can be studying for your test, that can be license renewal, that can be professional fees for whatever is associated with your
Okay.
business. So we like to support people in that way as well. We host networking events, and then we are considered system changers in a way. We look to see how can we solve some of the issues and the problems that we see within our community, but how can we do it with these mental health professionals that are a part of our network, so that we ultimately can make long-term change as it comes to systems. So there are a lot of projects and pilots that we've worked on that we have not publicized, because what we're doing is we're doing these pilots to test some theories, and then we're pulling them back and we're looking at the research behind it.
Okay.
And then we're going to from looking at the results that we get, start implementing some different programs and things that can best help our community. So, we are there's only a little bit of our organization that is front facing that the public can see. A lot of what we do is behind closed doors, and that's supporting the mental health professionals, because if they're burnt out and they're not cared
that was one
for,
of my next questions.
you're not going to have mental health therapists.
Definitely.
They have to be
Yeah.
cared for in order to do a great job.
In order to care for people.
Absolutely.
So you saying fires when you look up the collective, it's more or so when you look it up for people looking for therapists, but then the other stuff that's for the actual therapist is more so on the back end.
Right, absolutely.
Is it a reason that you structured it like that?
Yeah, because they're equally important.
No, so if I go to the site, right, am I going to see the resources for me if I want to become a therapist? Like, am I going to see those resources there that I can connect with you on there?
If you want to connect with us, we do have a private Facebook group. We also have a private membership portal. So there are different ways that you can be directed to those spaces. But if you are a person that is looking for mental health care, then right there on the website, you can go to the directory.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll be thinking it sometimes from a marketing standpoint, because I do video marketing. And the reason I ask you that, because you stressing how important it is for our therapists to actually also have care, right? And then you have the resources to kind of help these people get more care. Then what I'm asking is, like, why can't they see that on there, right? To make it more available to them. You know what I mean? To make it more available to those people who are therapists
Right.
that might need more help. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So yeah, it's listed on the website. We
Okay,
have
so
different ways.
okay, so maybe it was how I asked you the question then.
Yep.
'Cause-
So
okay.
there's different ways that they can connect with us through our website, and if they were interested in being connected to the larger collective. And like if they're interested in being a member, or they're interested in learning more, or even listed in the directory, there's somewhere that they can go. And we
Okay,
have a
gotcha.
lot of,
Yeah.
signage.
Now that was my question. So it probably was just how I asked it, and then how
okay.
you gave it to me. I was just trying to unpack it. All right. So, what has been your biggest struggle as an entrepreneur?
Doing it on your own ish. I mean, I have a lot of help. I do. I have a team of people that I work with in every business, but at the end of the day, you are the decision maker. Sometimes I don't want to make decisions anymore. Sometimes I want somebody else to make them for me. And that's one thing that I enjoyed about, being an employee for someone else is I'm not responsible for these heavy
Yeah.
decisions. So I would say that's the biggest thing is that it falls on you. Everything does.
And how have you navigated that through your business? Because I know like that is one of the biggest things as an entrepreneur is I think one of the things that we kind of find out as we go on is like, all right, I'm gonna have to build a solid team. Like,
Yep.
how did you navigate that?
One, I was very strategic in how I wanted to do my finances so that I could hire people to help me.
Okay.
Some of the best business advice that I ever got is someone asked me did I want to grow into a group practice, and I had the opportunity, and every time it was actually two times, and I changed my mind.
So it's
But
just more of a therapist like under you type thing. Okay.
And so I just decided to remain a solo therapist because I knew there was different things I wanted to try out and do as well. But they said, set your business up like you're an optometrist. And optometrists, they have a lot of people around them, but it's only one of them typically. And so, they have someone doing the scheduling, they have someone
Yeah.
that's doing the fitting, they have someone, they have a couple people that are on their team, but there's one optometrist. And so, and this was from the example that they gave me. I'm not saying it's like this
No,
everywhere.
I'm picturing it
But
now. Like I get it because when you go into the eyeglass place, it's like,
it's usually a
it's
couple people, and then
but
you see.
they are really the
Exactly. And so that's how I set up my practice. So, I have a team of people that I work with and they help to make my job easier. So then what I do is I see the client, I do my notes, and then that's it. And so I have a biller, a person that's going in and doing the billing for me. Back when I was doing more marketing, I had people who was doing marketing for me and, some social media stuff, have an accountant, who was, helping with the numbers and all of that, bookkeeping and etc. So
and you
yeah,
started off like that.
I started off with just me. And then again, I saved up and made sure
Okay, so
that
let's talk
how I
about
did
that
my
process.
money.
Yeah. So how
Yeah.
did you actually do that to be able to start to hire all of these people down the road?
You just have to have a plan. And so money will go where you direct it. And so I was making money. And so because I was making money, I didn't want to just blow it. I knew I needed to structure my business. And so that meant that I had to have a set amount of money for myself. And then I was putting money over to the side so that I could bring these people on.
Yeah.
And in doing that, again, I'm a solo practice. So my volume is not that heavy. So they're contractors. They're not charging me a significant amount of money, but it was still money that I had to account for
Yeah.
outside of my business. So,
So
or
did you
within
have
my
like
business.
goals, like when I get to this number, or when I get to this many people, then I'll bring on this person. Or
It
then
was
when I
just a
get here, I'll
financial
bring in.
goal. Yep, it was just a financial goal. And I said, when I start making this amount a month and I want to make even more, I'm going to hire on somebody to now do the billing because I did everything on my own from the
It's a
beginning. I
lot
did my
in the
credentialing,
business.
I did my own bookkeeping, I did my own billing, I did my own social
Man,
media, I did
yes.
all of it. But then once I started getting a return on my own investments, then I said, well, let me go ahead and use this funding that I'm getting from the work to now start hiring people to do this work
So
for
did you have
me.
a certain? Was you like all in? Because I know it's like sometimes some entrepreneurs like you want to of course be able to pay yourself sometimes, but then sometimes it's like, all right, I'm just putting 100% back into the business to make it grow. Like, did you have like what was?
No, in the beginning, before I started seeing clients, that's when it's 100% because you're not making any money. But it's a service field. So if you're seeing people, then you're getting paid. So as long as I was seeing people, I was getting paid. And so from, whenever I was getting paid, I was setting a percentage of how much that I was taking, how much I was putting in savings, how much I was putting up for taxes, how much
But
I
you had
was.
all of that worked out, like the percentages that you was gonna do beforehand. I think a lot of times, that be the thing, especially when you start commingling your funds with
That's
with
tough.
your other money,
Yep, that's
and then you
tough.
get into a habit and a pattern of it. Then it's like, man, then now you trying to get back on your entrepreneur track, and now it's like, man, now I ain't got all these funds coming in like I.
Yeah, your business will
But
suffer
you'll
if
sink yourself
you.
though, yeah, if you
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
set your
yeah.
stuff up like that, right?
Yep,
Right.
yep. And then
Um,
it holds you accountable too when there are other people who are working with you or contracted with you. Like you got to pay them. So, that's another reason to have some financial discipline. And then ultimately, you're not doing this for a hobby. This is an
yeah,
income.
we trying
And
to
so
make
you
money,
got to treat
definitely,
it, you
yeah.
got to respect it. And that's the thing about money. I tell people all the time, it's a relationship. Money is just like any other relationship. If you dog it out, it's gonna dog you out. If you ignore it, all right, well,
Man,
I'm gonna ignore you. If you sow into it, you take care of it, you nurture it, you pay attention to it, then the same will come back to you. But you really got to make
agree,
sure that you have
definitely,
a positive relationship with it. And it takes
definitely.
a while to get there, especially if you weren't raised in a space, which a lot of us weren't. I'm not saying that I was, but I had to learn how to respect money.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. We don't, cause we raised around where everybody want to stunt and
or survival, right? Maybe you just didn't
survival
have it.
too. You know what I mean? But then you be
Mhm.
in survival mode, and then you still go buy them J's. That's 250. But again, that's part of the survival mentality,
Mhm.
and it becomes the point of what I have is my status.
Mhm.
But man, we all around in the same area. We in the same boat. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
All right. So, what is something that you would tell someone who wants to get into your field?
I
Give
would
them some
tell
advice.
them
They want to start today.
to one, do their own work because I started in therapy when I was actually in my undergrad program. And they encourage that. They always
Mm,
encourage you to go to therapy yourself. How can you help someone else?
if you've never been through that process, truly.
Exactly. So it's a good space to always start asking those internal questions to yourself. And then also making sure that you know what lane you want to go in. There are many different disciplines. You can be a psychologist, a psychiatrist, you can be a licensed counselor, you can be a social worker, you could be a marriage and family therapist. Um, there's a lot.
Yeah,
There's a lot
sound
of
like a lot.
fields. So you have to determine which one you want to go into, and that just means you have to do some research and figure out which one is the best fit for you. So after you do that and you determine which route you want to go into, start looking for money, look for scholarships. There are schools around here that offer some support. I know Western for sure
Okay.
offers support, and that's a space that people can look into. All colleges do have, scholarships, internships, externships, assistantships, and things that you should be able to apply for. And then once you do that, if you're interested in that route, then just start your coursework. After you're doing your coursework, start looking for an internship. And then after internship, you got to do your hours to get your license. So it's about a 6 or 7 year process.
Just to get the license.
From school to licensure, it's about 7 to 8 years ish.
Okay. So you know now if you want to have your own practice and you don't have no start, you gotta have some patience.
Yeah, because it's 4 years for undergrad, 2 years
Uh-huh.
for grad. That's six right there. Then you have to have a number of hours of actual um clinical hours that you have to
That you,
obtain
yep.
before you can get your licensure.
Okay.
So and then you got to pass the test.
So
So
then if you don't pass, now you make it even longer because you gotta go retake the
seriously,
test
that
and
is
do all
really
of
a
that.
thing
Did you
for
have to
people.
retake the test?
I didn't. I passed the first time.
She went to Creston. That's why, huh? Okay, so what is something that you want to leave with the people before we wrap it up?
Um, I mean, in connecting entrepreneurship and mental health, I would definitely say one, take care of your mental health because if you do not, it's going to impact your business. And then if you do, it's also going to positively impact your business. So it's a win-win whenever you look at it through that lens. Also, you do not have to be going through crisis in order to go to therapy. It is a very proactive move. Just go because you're worth it. And then the last thing I would say is that if you're not ready for someone else to come into that process with you yet, at least start with yourself and start asking yourself those questions.
You said go online and get a
feelings list. Just Google a feelings list and ask yourself, hey, this week I'm going to look at these 10 emotions. Which ones of these have I experienced? And if you haven't, then start making that like a question mark that you linger around and pay attention to what that emotion may be for you.
Dope. Okay. All right. So now for the people who need therapy, where do they find you?
So I'm not accepting any clients, but they can go.
And then you are a solo firm, though, right?
I am solo.
Okay. So then now this is for the therapists and the people who need therapy. Then that's what it sounds like. Where are we going to, right? OURMHC.org. And that is our Mental Health Collective's online directory. And then there we can find different therapists. And if it's a therapist, what is criteria that you have if a therapist wants to be listed on that site?
They just have to be licensed. It's free to sign up if you're a therapist or a wellness provider. And so they just have to be certified or licensed. We just have to have some way of verifying that they are who they say they are, because we do verify all licenses and certifications. And then they can sign up, and it's free.
All right. And then you got the merch too. So you got t-shirts. Is this some of your merch that you're wearing right now?
It is. It says I help people heal. And this is one of my releases earlier last year.
I just knew you was coming with some merch.
I know.
I'm like, she about to come with some merch. I might get it.
My next release is October 1st. So
October 1st. And then where can the people find your merchandise?
Where? WEAR. YOUR journey.com.
Dope. So this is Rebecca. Get therapy. Even if you don't feel like you need it, and especially if you feel like you don't want it, get therapy.
I was supposed to be looking here the whole time.
No, we got look, that's your angle.
Okay.
That's my angle, but also this is your angle too.
Oh,
so you got like the main angle, that's both of us. Then you got your close up here and there.
Okay. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, no. So we just good. You ain't gotta worry that.
Okay.
We good. And then is there anything else that you want to say to the people before we leave out?
You're worth it. That's it.
You are worth it. Mm-hmm. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to subscribe. If you didn't like it, hey, don't like it. What is that? Thumbs down it if you ain't like it. Hey, but go get therapy. And with that being said, we are out. Peace.
Bye.